They said the Millionaire's twins were impossible. 13 nannies in 6 months. All of them walked out. Some crying. Some furious. One left everything behind just to escape. But the night everything changed, it wasn't a trained expert who saved those children. It was a tired waitress, carrying debt, grief, and a heart that refused to break. And what she discovered inside that mansion wasn't just bad behavior. It was something far more painful. Something that would force a broken father to face the truth and change all their lives forever. If stories about love, family, and second chances mean something to you, take a moment to subscribe. Because sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest miracles. It started in a place no millionaire would ever choose to walk into. A small diner on 54th Street. Worn booths, chipped plates, and the smell of burnt coffee that never quite left the air. Clara Jenkins had been working there for 6 years. 6 years of long nights, rude customers, and aching feet. 6 years of carrying a weight no one could see. Her mother had passed away, leaving behind more than memories. Medical bills. Loans. A debt that followed Clara like a shadow. At 26, she wasn't chasing dreams anymore. She was just trying to survive. That afternoon, she was wiping down a booth when the door opened. The bell chimed. And everything changed. A man walked in first. Tall. Sharp. Expensive suit that probably cost more than Clara made in a month. His face looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept properly in years. Richard Sterling. Even Clara recognized him. CO. Billionaire. The kind of man people read about but never actually see. But he wasn't alone. Behind him came chaos. 2 children. A boy and a girl. Around 7. Perfectly dressed, like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. But their eyes. Cold. Sharp. Watching everything. And the woman trailing behind them. She looked like she was about to break. "Sit down, Beatrice," the nanny said, her voice trembling. "I'm not sitting there," the little girl snapped. "It smells like poor people." The words hung in the air. Clara paused mid-wipe. She'd heard insults before. Plenty of them. But something about the way that child said it, like it was just truth, not even cruelty, hit different. Before the nanny could respond, the boy grabbed a bottle of syrup. Calmly, almost thoughtfully, he unscrewed the cap and flipped it. The thick liquid poured straight into the nanny's designer bag. Slow. Deliberate. No hesitation. "Leo, no!" the nanny cried, grabbing the bag as syrup soaked everything inside. That was it. Something inside her broke. "I'm done," she shouted, tears running down her face. "I don't care about the contract. I don't care about the money. They are monsters." And just like that, she walked out. Left the billionaire. Left the children. Left everything. Silence filled the diner. The twins didn't look upset. They looked amused. "That was easy," the girl said, smirking. "I give her a D-." Clara stared at them. She didn't see monsters. She saw 2 children, who had never been told no. She grabbed a rag and walked over. "Excuse me." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried something stronger than volume. Authority. The kind earned, not given. Richard looked up, surprised. "I'll pay for the damages," he said quickly. "You'll pay for the syrup," Clara replied, already placing a bus tub on the table. She turned to the boy, Leo, who was now reaching for the ketchup bottle. Clara leaned in slightly. "If you pour that, you're the one cleaning it. And trust me, our mop smells like bleach and old onions." Leo froze. Not because he was scared. Because no one had ever spoken to him like that. "You can't make me," he said. "I can," Clara replied calmly. This is my section. My rules. She pointed to the booth. Sit. Now. For a moment, nothing moved. The entire diner watched. Then slowly, Leo sat down. Beatrice followed, confused, almost shocked. Clara cleaned the mess in seconds. Efficient. Unbothered. Pancakes or waffles? She asked. The twins didn't answer right away. They just stared at her, trying to understand her. When she walked away, Richard leaned back in his seat, watching her like she was something he couldn't explain. Minutes later, Clara returned with food. The twins were quiet. Actually quiet. Eating. No tantrums. No destruction. Just children. Richard waited until she came back to clear the plates. "How did you do that?" he asked. Clara shrugged. "Treat them like kids." He studied her carefully. Her worn shoes. Her tired eyes. Her steady hands. "How much do you make here?" he asked. Clara frowned slightly. "Enough." Richard pulled out a checkbook, wrote something down, and slid it across the table. Clara looked at it. Her breath caught. It was more money than she had seen in years. "That's your signing bonus," Richard said. 20,000 a month. Full benefits. You start tonight." Clara looked up. Then slowly, her eyes shifted toward the twins. They were watching her. Not smiling anymore. Planning. Waiting. Something in her chest tightened. This wasn't just a job. This was a storm. And she was about to walk straight into it. She picked up the check, took a slow breath, and said quietly, "All right, I'll come." But as she stepped out of the diner that evening, heading toward a life she didn't understand yet, Clara had no idea. She wasn't being hired to manage difficult children. She was stepping into a broken family. And something inside that house was far more dangerous than two angry kids. And that night, it would be waiting for her. The drive to Greenwich felt longer than it actually was. Clara sat behind the wheel of her old car, the check still folded in her pocket like something unreal, like it might disappear if she looked at it too long. The city lights faded behind her, replaced by quiet roads, tall trees, and houses that didn't look like homes. They looked like statements. Money lived out here. Power lived out here. And people like Clara didn't. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't just about money. Not really. It was about breathing again. No more collection calls. No more choosing between rent and groceries. No more waking up with that heavy feeling sitting on her chest. But something else lingered in her mind. Those kids. The way they looked at her. Not angry. Not even spoiled. Something sharper than that. Like they were testing the world, to see how far it would let them go before it broke. By the time she reached the estate, the sun had already dipped low. The gates alone were taller than anything Clara had ever owned. They opened slowly, silently, like the place itself was watching her. Her car rolled down a long private drive, lined with trimmed hedges and stone statues that looked cold and lifeless. And then she saw it. The house. No, not a house. A fortress. Glass. Steel. Marble. Everything perfect. Everything spotless. Everything empty. Clara parked near a line of black luxury SUVs, her old car looking out of place like it didn't belong there. She stepped out, grabbing her duffel bag. For a second, she just stood there, taking it in. This was the kind of place people dreamed about. But something about it didn't feel warm. It felt quiet in the wrong way. The front door opened before she could knock. An older woman stood there, posture straight, expression calm but tired. "You must be Clara," she said. "I am," Clara replied, offering a small nod. "I'm Mrs. Higgins. I manage the estate. There was something in her eyes. Not judgment. Not curiosity. Something closer to sympathy. Come in, she said, stepping aside. Though I wouldn't get too comfortable just yet. Clara raised an eyebrow slightly as she stepped inside. The floors gleamed. The ceilings stretched high above. Everything echoed. No family photos. No toys. No signs that children lived here at all. Why not? Clara asked. Mrs. Higgins let out a quiet breath. The last one lasted 4 days, she said. The one before that didn't make it past lunch on day 2. Clara adjusted her grip on the bag. I'm not them. Mrs. Higgins gave her a small, almost sad smile. They all said that. They walked up a wide staircase, their footsteps echoing through the house. Mr. Sterling won't be here tonight, Mrs. Higgins added. He works late. Keeps to himself when he is home. Clara nodded. She had already figured that much. And the children? Upstairs. 3rd floor. That's their wing. Clara frowned slightly. Their wing. Yes, Mrs. Higgins replied. It keeps things contained. Contained. That word didn't sit right. As they reached the top, the air felt even quieter. Like the house itself held its breath. Your room is here, Mrs. Higgins said, stopping at a door. The children are across the hall. Dinner is usually served in their rooms. Usually? Clara asked. Mrs. Higgins hesitated. That depends on how long you last. And with that, she turned and walked away. Clara stood alone in the hallway. Her eyes moved to the door in front of her. Something about it made her pause. Years of working in that diner had taught her one thing. When something feels off, it usually is. She stepped closer. Her hand hovered near the handle. Then she noticed it. A faint shine on the brass. Too smooth. Too clean. Her eyes dropped to the floor. There it was. A thin line, stretched low across the doorway. Almost invisible. And beneath it, a small patch of clear liquid. Clara exhaled slowly. Really? She muttered under her breath. She reached into her bag, pulled out a cloth, and wiped the handle before carefully stepping over the line. She opened the door fully, then leaned casually against the frame. All right, she called out, her voice steady. You can come out now. Silence. Then a door creaked open across the hall. The twins stepped out, dressed perfectly, faces calm, eyes watching. You didn't fall, Leo said, almost disappointed. Clara crossed her arms. I don't fall. Beatrice tilted her head slightly. You were supposed to. I figured. She looked between them. Let's get something clear, Clara said, her tone calm but firm. I don't scare easy. And I don't play games I don't win. The twins exchanged a glance. That was new. Daddy won't let you do anything to us, Beatrice said. Clara stepped closer, lowering herself to their level. I don't work for your dad, she said quietly. I work for me. That made them pause. Just for a second. And right now, she continued, you've got 2 choices. She pointed back at the door. You clean that mess up. Then toward the stairs. Or you don't eat tonight. Silence filled the hallway. A long one. The kind that usually ended with screaming or defiance. But this time, it didn't. Leo looked down at the line. Then slowly, he stepped forward, reached down, and started untying it. Beatrice hesitated, then followed. Clara watched them. Not smiling. Not praising. Just waiting. And for the first time in a long time, the twins weren't in control. But as Clara stood there, arms crossed, watching two rich children clean up their own trap. She didn't feel like she had won anything, because deep down, she could feel it. This wasn't the real fight. This was just the beginning. And whatever had turned those kids into what they were, was still inside this house, watching, waiting, and sooner or later, it was going to come face to face with her. The thin line of string came loose in Leo's hands, and the silence in the hallway shifted. It wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't tense in the same way. It was something else. Unfamiliar. Beatrice wiped the small patch of oil off the floor with a cloth Clara had tossed toward them. Her movements were careful, almost unsure, like she wasn't used to doing something this simple. Clara didn't step in to help. She didn't praise them either. She just stood there, watching. Because this wasn't about cleaning a floor. This was about something much deeper. When they finished, Leo straightened up and looked at her. "What now?" he asked. There was no sarcasm in his voice this time. Just curiosity. Clara nodded toward the stairs. "Now we eat." Beatrice frowned. "We eat upstairs." "Not tonight," Clara said. They didn't move. The resistance came back, quieter now, but still there. "That's how it's always been," Beatrice added, her voice tightening slightly. "Food gets brought to us." Clara tilted her head. "And how's that working out for you?" The question landed harder than they expected. Neither of them answered. Clara turned and started walking toward the stairs. "I'm not carrying plates upstairs," she said over her shoulder. "If you want dinner, you come down and get it." She didn't check if they were following. Didn't slow down. Didn't repeat herself. She just walked. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then soft footsteps echoed behind her. One. Then two. Clara allowed herself the smallest breath of relief, but she didn't show it. The kitchen was massive. Spotless. Cold. Everything placed perfectly, like no one actually lived there. A man stood near the counter, arranging something with precise movements. He didn't look up at first. But when he did, his expression changed instantly. Disapproval. "The children are not allowed in here," he said sharply. Clara dropped her bag near the door and rolled up her sleeves. "They are now." The man stared at her. "And you are." "The reason they're standing here instead of destroying something upstairs," Clara replied calmly. The twins stayed near the doorway, unsure, like they had just stepped into a world that didn't belong to them. "We don't cook," Leo muttered. Clara glanced at him. "You do tonight." Beatrice let out a quiet scoff. "That's not happening." Clara walked past them, grabbing a bowl and placing it on the counter. "Then don't eat." Silence. That word again. Eat or don't. No begging. No negotiation. Just choice. And for the first time, they didn't know how to respond to that. Clara poured flour into the bowl. "Come here." They didn't move right away. But something pulled them forward. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that no one had ever spoken to them like this before. Leo stepped closer first. Beatrice followed. Reluctantly. Clara added water. "Hands." Leo blinked. "What?" "Your hands," Clara repeated. "You're mixing it." He hesitated, like she had asked him to do something impossible. Slowly, he reached out, touched the mixture. It stuck to his fingers. His face twisted in discomfort. Beatrice made a face. "That's disgusting." Clara leaned against the counter. "It's food." "It's messy," Beatrice shot back. Clara's voice softened. Just a little. "So is life." That made Beatrice pause. Just for a second. Then, without saying anything, she reached in too. The first few minutes were awkward. clumsy. The dough stuck everywhere. Flour dusted their clothes. Leo kept shaking his hands like he wanted to get rid of the feeling. But then, something changed. Push it, Clara said quietly. Fold it. Leo tried again. Better this time. Beatrice watched him, then copied. Slowly, carefully. The tension in the room shifted. Not gone, but different. Their voices softened. Their movements became more focused. Less defensive. More real. You're doing it wrong, Beatrice muttered. I'm not, Leo snapped back. You are. Look like this. She reached over, adjusting the dough. Leo frowned, but didn't pull away. Clara watched them from a distance. She didn't interrupt. Didn't correct every mistake. She let them figure it out. Because that's what they had been missing. Not rules. Not control. Just someone who expected something from them. When the dough finally came together, it was uneven. Messy. Far from perfect. But it was theirs. Clara nodded toward the oven. Let's see what you made. They worked together, awkwardly but with purpose. Spreading sauce. Dropping cheese. Too much in some places. Too little in others. It didn't matter. For the first time, they were creating something instead of destroying it. When the pizzas came out, they didn't look impressive. One was slightly burnt. The other uneven. Clara sliced them anyway and placed the plates down. Eat. Leo took a bite first. Slow. Careful. He chewed. Then took another. Bigger this time. It's okay, he said, trying not to sound impressed. Beatrice picked at hers, then took a bite. Her expression didn't change. But she didn't put it down. Clara poured herself a glass of water, watching quietly. You made it, she said. They didn't respond. But something flickered in their eyes. Something small. Something fragile. Pride. And for a brief moment, they looked like children again. Not rich. Not difficult. Just kids. But that moment didn't last. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Sharp. Fast. Mrs. Higgins appeared in the doorway. Her face pale. Clara. The tone in her voice made everything stop. Clara straightened slightly. What is it? Mr. Sterling is coming home early, she said. And he's not alone. The twins froze. The change was instant. The softness in their faces disappeared. Their bodies stiffened. Fear replaced everything. Who? Clara asked. Mrs. Higgins hesitated. Then said quietly, Miss Sylvia. The name hung in the air. Heavy. Cold. Leo's hand tightened around his plate. Beatrice set hers down slowly. Clean this, she whispered urgently to Clara. Now. Clara looked at her. At the panic in her eyes. Real panic. What happens if she sees this? Clara asked. Neither of them answered right away. Then Leo spoke, his voice low. She'll tell Dad we're out of control. Beatrice swallowed hard. And he'll believe her. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls were closing in. Clara looked at the mess. Then back at them. And in that moment, she understood something important. Those kids weren't just acting out. They were surviving something. Go upstairs, Clara said quietly. They didn't argue. Didn't hesitate. They just ran. And as Clara turned toward the sink, grabbing a cloth, preparing for whatever was about to walk through that door, she felt it again. That same quiet instinct. The real problem in this house wasn't upstairs anymore. It was coming through the front door. The front door opened with a quiet, controlled force, the kind that didn't need to slam to make its presence known. Clara had just finished wiping the last trace of flour from the counter when she heard voices echo through the house. One of them was Richard. Tired. Low. Almost distant. The other. Sharp. Cold. Confident in a way that didn't ask for permission. Clara dried her hands slowly and walked toward the foyer. She didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. But she was alert. Because she could already feel it. That shift in the air. That tension the twins had reacted to. And then she saw her. Sylvia stood near the entrance like she owned not just the house, but the space around it. Perfectly dressed. Perfect posture. Not a single strand of hair out of place. Everything about her said control. Calculated. Precise. Her eyes moved to Clara the moment she stepped into view. Not curious. Not welcoming. Evaluating. "And who is this?" Sylvia asked, her voice smooth, but edged with something sharp underneath. Richard glanced over, rubbing his temples slightly. "This is Clara," he said. "The new nanny." Sylvia's gaze didn't leave Clara. Her eyes moved slowly, taking in every detail. The worn boots. The simple clothes. The absence of anything expensive. It took her less than a second to decide what she thought. "The waitress," Sylvia said, almost amused. The word wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The kind meant to remind Clara exactly where she stood. Clara didn't react. Didn't flinch. She just met her gaze. "Yes," she said simply. "That would be me." Sylvia let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Richard," she said, turning slightly toward him, "tell me this is temporary." Richard's jaw tightened just a little. "She handled the kids," he said. Sylvia raised an eyebrow. "For how long?" she asked. "Long enough," Richard replied. Sylvia took a slow step closer to Clara. Close enough for the scent of her perfume to settle in the air. "Handling them for an hour over pancakes is very different from managing this house," she said quietly. Her voice softened, but not kindly. More like a warning wrapped in politeness. Clara didn't move. "I didn't come here to manage the house," she replied. "I came here to take care of the kids." Sylvia's lips curved slightly. "That would be the same thing," she said. Clara shook her head. "No," she said. "It's not." For a moment, silence. The kind that sits between two people who understand exactly what's being said, even when it's not spoken out loud. Sylvia's expression hardened just a fraction. "Tomorrow night," she continued, shifting her focus slightly, "we're hosting a dinner. Important people. Business partners." Clara listened. "The children will remain upstairs," Sylvia added. "Out of sight. Quiet. No interruptions." Clara's jaw tightened slightly. "They live here," she said. Sylvia's eyes snapped back to her. "And this is not their night," she replied sharply. Richard exhaled, clearly exhausted. "Sylvia." But she didn't stop. "I will not have them ruin something important," she said. "Not again." That word hung there. Again. Clara noticed it. Stored it. "Can you manage that?" Sylvia asked, her voice lowering again. Clara held her gaze. "I can manage the children," she said calmly. "But I won't lock them away like they don't exist." Sylvia's expression didn't change much, but something colder slipped through. "Let me make something clear," she said, stepping closer. "You are here because you're temporary. That's all. A short-term solution." Clara didn't step back. "And you're here because?" Clara asked quietly. Richard looked up sharply. Sylvia's eyes narrowed. "For now," Clara continued, her voice steady, "I'll focus on the kids. You can focus on your dinner." The tension snapped tighter. For a moment, it felt like something would break. But Sylvia smiled. Not warm. Not kind. Just controlled. "We'll see how long that lasts," she said softly. Then she turned. Looped her arm through Richard's. "Come," she said. "You look exhausted." Richard hesitated. Just for a second. His eyes moved to Clara. Something unspoken passed through that look. Regret. Confusion. Maybe even guilt. But then he let Sylvia lead him away. Their footsteps faded down the hall, and the house fell quiet again. Clara stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, letting the tension settle. Then she turned, heading back toward the kitchen. But she didn't go inside. Instead, she looked up, toward the staircase. The twins were there, standing just out of sight, watching. They hadn't made a sound, but they had heard everything. Leo stepped forward first. "You're not going to send us upstairs tomorrow, are you?" he asked. His voice wasn't challenging this time. It wasn't sharp. It was something else. Something closer to fear. Beatrice didn't speak, but her eyes said the same thing. Clara walked toward them slowly. "No," she said. They didn't react right away. Like they didn't quite believe it. "She'll make Dad do it," Beatrice said quietly. Clara stopped in front of them. "Maybe," she replied. Leo swallowed. "He always listens to her." There it was again. Not anger. Not defiance. Just hurt. Clara crouched down slightly, meeting their eyes. "Then maybe," she said softly, "it's time he starts seeing something different." They looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Leo asked. Clara's expression shifted. Not hard. Not soft either. Focused. "It means," she said, "tomorrow you don't fight her." Beatrice frowned. "That's exactly what she wants." Clara shook her head. "No," she said. "She wants you to act exactly how she says you do." The twins went quiet, thinking. And for the first time, they weren't planning chaos. They were listening. Clara straightened slowly. "And tomorrow," she continued, her voice calm but certain, "we're going to show her she's wrong." Beatrice's eyes narrowed slightly. A different kind of spark forming now. Not anger. Strategy. Leo glanced at his sister, then back at Clara. "What do we have to do?" Clara looked between them, and for the first time since she arrived, a faint, knowing smile touched her face. "Tomorrow," she said quietly, "you're going to be perfect." The words hung there, unfamiliar, strange, almost impossible. But something about the way she said it made it feel real. The twins didn't argue, didn't laugh. They just stood there, thinking, and somewhere deep inside them, something began to shift. But Clara knew. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was a bigger game. And tomorrow night was going to be the first move. The next morning didn't feel like a normal morning. It felt like something was waiting. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that made every small sound feel louder than it should. Clara stood in the kitchen, pouring orange juice into 3 glasses. Her movements were calm, steady, but her mind was already ahead of the day. Planning, watching, preparing. Footsteps echoed behind her. The twins. They didn't rush in like before. Didn't slam doors or demand anything. They walked in slowly, almost cautiously. Leo sat down first. Beatrice followed, smoothing her dress without even realizing she was doing it. They looked different this morning, not just in how they moved, but in how they carried themselves. Clara slid the glasses toward them. "Drink," she said. They did. No complaints. No attitude. Just quiet. Clara leaned against the counter, studying them. "All right," she said. "We don't have much time." Beatrice looked up. "What exactly are we doing tonight?" she asked. Clara didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. "We're changing the story." Leo frowned. "What story?" "The one she's been telling about you," Clara replied. The words landed softly, but deeply. Beatrice's fingers tightened around her glass. "She tells everyone we're out of control," she said. "I know," Clara said. Leo looked down. "And Dad believes her." Clara's voice softened. "Not because he wants to," she said. "Because it's easier." They both looked at her, confused. "He's tired," Clara continued. "He lost something, and instead of fixing it, he stepped away from it." Beatrice swallowed. "He stepped away from us." Clara didn't deny it. But she didn't let it stay there either. "Tonight," she said gently, "you remind him what he's about to lose." Silence filled the room again. Not heavy this time. Focused. "What do we do?" Leo asked. Clara crossed her arms slightly. "You walk in like you belong there," she said. "You speak politely. You listen. You don't react to anything she says." Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "And if she says something awful?" Clara met her gaze. "She will," she said calmly. "That's part of the plan." Leo leaned forward slightly. "So we just let her?" Clara shook her head. "No," she said. "You don't let her win. You just don't play her game." They went quiet again, thinking, processing. This wasn't what they were used to. They knew how to fight. They knew how to break things. But this required control. And trust. "Why are you helping us?" Beatrice asked suddenly. Clara paused. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. A memory. A feeling she didn't often let surface. "Because I know what it's like," she said quietly. "To feel like no one's on your side." That was enough. No long explanation. No details. Just truth. And they felt it. The moment settled. Then Clara straightened. "Finish up," she said. "We've got work to do." The rest of the day moved slowly. Measured. Different from anything the twins had ever experienced. Clara didn't let them hide in their rooms. Didn't let them disappear behind screens. She kept them with her. Talking. Practicing. Adjusting the way they spoke. The way they sat. The way they responded. "Look at me when you talk," she told Leo. "Don't rush your words," she said to Beatrice. "You don't need to prove anything. Just be clear." At first, it felt unnatural. Forced. But little by little, it started to settle. Not perfect, but real. And somewhere in between the corrections, something else grew. Connection. The kind they hadn't felt in a long time. By late afternoon, the house began to shift. Staff moved quickly through the halls. Voices echoed. The tension from the night before returned, but sharper now. More controlled. More dangerous. Clara stood with the twins at the top of the staircase, looking down. The dining area below had been transformed. Everything perfect. Everything arranged to impress. Beatrice adjusted her sleeve. "Do we look okay?" she asked quietly. Clara glanced at her. At both of them. They looked different. Still themselves. But calmer. Grounded. "You look like kids who don't need to prove anything," Clara said. Leo let out a small breath. "I feel like I'm about to mess it up." Clara rested a hand lightly on his shoulder. "You won't," she said. "Because you're not pretending. You're just not fighting." that seemed to steady him. A car door slammed outside. The sound echoed through the house. Clara's eyes shifted toward the front. "They're here," she said. The twins stiffened slightly. That fear, it came back for a moment. But this time, it didn't take over. Clara stepped back slightly. "Remember," she said softly, "you're not the problem." They nodded. Slowly. Then footsteps approached. Voices filled the lower level. Clara watched the twins closely, waiting. And when the moment came, they moved. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just steady. Step by step, they began walking down the staircase. And as Clara stood there, watching them descend into that room, she didn't feel nervous. She didn't feel unsure. But deep down, she knew one thing. Tonight wouldn't just change how others saw those kids. It would change everything. Because the truth was about to walk into that room with them. And not everyone was ready for it. The room fell quiet before the twins even reached the bottom of the stairs. Not completely silent, but close enough that every step they took seemed to echo louder than it should. Clara stayed at the top, just out of sight, watching. Not interfering. Not guiding. This part, they had to do on their own. Richard was seated at the long table, his posture tired but composed. Across from him sat several sharply dressed men, their attention shifting as the twins entered. And Sylvia. She froze. For just a fraction of a second. But Clara saw it. That crack. That moment where control slipped. Because this wasn't what she expected. Not even close. Leo walked slightly ahead, his movement steady, his chin lifted just enough to show confidence, not arrogance. Beatrice followed, graceful, calm. Her expression composed in a way that felt far older than her age. They stopped a few steps from the table. "Good evening, Father," Leo said. His voice was even. Measured. Nothing like the sharp tone he used before. Richard blinked. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. Surprise. Real surprise. "Good evening," he replied slowly. Beatrice turned slightly toward Sylvia. "Good evening," she said politely. No edge. No attitude. Just respect. Sylvia didn't answer right away. Her eyes moved between them, searching for something. A mistake. A crack. Anything. But there was nothing. Leo shifted his attention to the guests. "We didn't mean to interrupt," he said. "We just wanted to say good night." The words landed softly. But the effect, it was immediate. One of the men at the table leaned back slightly, clearly impressed. "Well," he said with a small smile, "that's rare these days." Another chuckled. "Very well-mannered," he added. Richard looked at his children again. Longer this time. Like he was seeing something he hadn't seen in a long while. Something familiar. Something he thought was gone. Sylvia straightened in her chair. "They're usually not." But she stopped herself. Because there was nothing to point at. Nothing to prove her point. Beatrice stepped forward just slightly. "We hope you have a pleasant evening," she said gently. Her voice carried a softness now, but it didn't feel weak. It felt intentional. One of the men nodded. "Thank you, young lady," he said. "You've been raised well." That sentence. It hit harder than anything else. Clara saw it from above. The way Richard's shoulders shifted. The way something in his expression changed. Not pride. Not fully. But close. Very close. Sylvia noticed it too. And it bothered her. Deeply. "You should be upstairs," she said, her tone tightening just slightly. Leo turned his head toward her. Still calm. "We're going," he replied. No defiance. No hesitation. Just a statement. And then they turned. Walked away. The room stayed quiet for a moment after they left. Like everyone was processing what just happened. One of the guests leaned forward slightly. "Richard," he said, "you didn't mention your kids." Richard exhaled slowly. "They've been going through a phase," he said. The man smiled faintly. "If that's a phase," he replied, "most parents would be grateful." A few quiet laughs followed. But Sylvia didn't laugh. Her fingers tightened slightly around her glass. Because the narrative she had built, the image she had carefully shaped, was slipping right in front of her. And she couldn't stop it. Upstairs, the twins moved quickly once they were out of sight. They didn't speak at first. They just kept walking until they reached the hallway. Then Leo stopped. "Did we do it right?" he asked. His voice wasn't confident. "Not yet." Beatrice looked back toward the stairs. "They didn't look angry," she said quietly. Clara stepped into view. "You did exactly what you needed to do," she said. They both turned toward her, searching her face, looking for confirmation. "You didn't fight," Clara continued. "You didn't give her anything to use against you." Leo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Beatrice looked down at her hands. "They looked at us differently," she whispered. Clara nodded. "Because you showed them something different." There was a pause. A quiet one. Then Leo looked back toward the stairs. "Is it over?" he asked. Clara didn't answer right away. Her eyes shifted, thinking, calculating. "No," she said finally. This was just the first move. The words settled between them. And deep down, they all knew it was true. Because someone like Sylvia wouldn't let something like this go. Not without pushing back. Not without trying to regain control. And right on cue, a voice echoed from downstairs. Sharp. Controlled. Clara. All three of them froze. The tone wasn't loud, but it carried something dangerous. Beatrice's expression tightened. Leo's shoulders stiffened. Clara glanced toward the staircase, then back at them. "Stay here," she said quietly. They didn't argue, didn't question. They just nodded. Clara turned and walked toward the stairs. Each step measured, each breath steady. And as she descended, she already knew. This wasn't going to be a polite conversation. This was going to be something else. Something sharper. Something personal. When she reached the bottom, Sylvia was waiting. Alone. The guests were gone from sight. The room felt different now. Colder. More direct. Sylvia took a slow step forward. Her expression calm, but her eyes, they weren't calm at all. "You think you're clever," she said quietly. Clara didn't respond immediately. She just met her gaze. And in that silence, the real battle finally stepped into the light. Because this wasn't about the children anymore. This was about control, power, and who was going to lose it next. Clara held her ground. And for the first time since she entered that house, she understood exactly what she was up against. But she also understood something else. She wasn't backing down. Not now. Not after what she had seen in those kids. Not after what she had started. Sylvia tilted her head slightly. And her next words came out softer, but far more dangerous. "You have no idea what you just started." Clara's voice didn't shake. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I do." And somewhere upstairs, two children stood still in the hallway, listening, waiting, knowing that whatever happened next would decide everything. Upstairs, the twins didn't move. They stood close to each other in the dim hallway, listening to the silence stretch below them. It felt like the whole house was holding its breath. Downstairs, Clara didn't step back. She didn't look away. Sylvia's eyes stayed locked on her, sharp and controlled, but there was something underneath now, something restless. "You embarrassed me," Sylvia said quietly. Clara shook her head. "No," she replied. "You embarrassed yourself." The words landed clean. No anger. No raised voice. Just truth. Sylvia's lips tightened. "You think this ends well for you?" she asked. "You're a temporary fix. Nothing more. People like you don't last in places like this." Clara let out a slow breath. "Maybe," she said. "But I'm not here for the place." Sylvia's gaze flickered. "I'm here for them." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything said before. For a second, Sylvia didn't respond. Then she smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're already overstepping," she said. "And when Richard realizes that, you'll be out of here before the week ends." Clara tilted her head slightly. "Then maybe it's time he realizes more than that." Footsteps echoed behind them. Both women turned. Richard stood at the edge of the room. He hadn't gone far. And from the look on his face, he had heard enough. Sylvia's posture shifted instantly. "Richard," she said, her tone softening, "I was just—" "Stop," he said quietly. It wasn't loud, but it carried something new. Something steady. Something clear. Sylvia froze. Richard stepped forward slowly. His eyes moved from her to Clara, then upward toward the staircase. And for the first time in a long time, he looked present. Not distracted. Not distant. Present. "I saw them," he said. His voice was low, but there was something breaking through it. They were calm. Respectful. Sylvia let out a small breath. "They're pretending," she said quickly. "You know how they are. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell you." "No," Richard interrupted. That word hit harder than anything else. Sylvia blinked. "I think I've been listening to the wrong voice," he said. The room went still. Clara didn't move. She just watched. Sylvia stepped closer to him. "You're tired," she said gently. "You're overwhelmed. That's all. I've been helping you manage this." "You've been controlling it," Richard said. His voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it shifted everything. Sylvia's expression cracked, just slightly. "They're out of control," she said. "You've seen it yourself." Richard's jaw tightened. "I've seen what I believed," he said. "Not what was actually happening." A long silence followed. The kind that doesn't need words. The kind where everything starts to fall into place. Clara glanced toward the stairs. The twins were still there, watching, hearing every word. Richard turned slightly, his voice softer now. "Come down," he said. They hesitated, just for a moment. Then slowly, they did. Step by step. Careful. Uncertain. When they reached the bottom, they didn't speak. They just stood there, waiting. Richard looked at them. Really looked. And something in his expression changed completely. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were quiet, but they carried everything. The twins didn't react right away. Like they didn't expect to hear that. Like they didn't know what to do with it. "I should have been here," he continued. "Instead of pushing you away, instead of believing you were the problem." Beatrice's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Leo shifted slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't want us." Richard stepped closer. "I didn't know how to reach you," he said. "And instead of trying, I gave up." That landed deep. Because it wasn't an excuse. It was truth. Clara watched quietly. She didn't step in. Didn't interrupt. This moment didn't belong to her. It belonged to them. Beatrice took a small step forward. "You called me a monster," she said. Her voice trembled, but she didn't break. Richard's face tightened. "I was wrong," he said. Leo looked down. "She said we needed to go away," he added. Sylvia's breath caught. "That's not." But Richard raised his hand slightly. And she stopped. "I know," he said. And this time, there was no hesitation. No doubt. Just clarity. Sylvia stepped back slightly. Something in her posture shifted. Not confidence. Not control. Something closer to loss. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. Richard didn't look at her. "Maybe," he replied. "But it won't be this one." Silence filled the room again. Heavy. Final. Sylvia's gaze moved to Clara, then to the twins. And for the first time, she didn't have anything left to say. She turned, walked toward the door. And this time, no one stopped her. The sound of it closing echoed through the house. And then, nothing. Just quiet. But not the same quiet as before. This one felt lighter. Richard looked at his children again. Then slowly, he dropped to one knee. Not as a man with power. Not as a billionaire. But as a father. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he said. "But I want to try. If you'll let me." Beatrice moved first. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just one step. Then another. Until she was close enough to reach him. Leo followed. And for a moment, they just stood there. Then they leaned in. And held him. Tight. Not perfect. Not healed. But real. Clara turned slightly, giving them space. Her eyes softened. Because she knew. This was what those kids had been fighting for all along. Not control. Not attention. Just love. Time passed. Not in hours, but in something deeper. Moments. Changes. Small things. Dinner at the same table. Laughter in rooms that used to echo. Conversations that didn't feel forced. Clara didn't leave. Not because she had to, but because she chose to stay. Not as someone who fixed everything, but as someone who helped them find their way back to each other. And slowly, the house stopped feeling like a fortress, and started feeling like a home. Because in the end, it was never about money, or status, or control. It was about something far simpler. Love doesn't come from wealth. It comes from showing up, even when it's hard. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is one person who refuses to give up. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe, and tell me in the comments which part of the world you're watching from.